All right, as I said earlier, any opportunity that we have to welcome back a graduate of the program is one that we are extremely grateful for. And I'm very pleased tonight to invite comments from James Turk, who is a member of the Master of Science in Biotechnology class of 2007. That was the 4th cohort that ever graduated from the program. Jim is a biological safety officer for the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and we invite his comments tonight. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. I'm going to be unusual in that I'm going to sit down, if you don't mind, because my legs actually don't work very well. And but I'm going to blame Kurt, because as you'll see, I'm going to blame Kurt for everything tonight. A lot has changed since 2007 when I graduated, and I'm sure it had nothing to do with our class. So anyway, and also actually, I don't have my phone with me. I was going to take a selfie with all of you because Kurt told me specifically not to do it. I wasn't even thinking about doing it, but he brought it up. So anyway, I'm going to sit down if you don't mind. I was kind of surprised when Kurt asked me to give a presentation. I was pleasantly surprised. I certainly wanted to do that. But I thought, I'm the biosafety officer of UW-Madison, so I like what I do, and the people that work for me like what they do, but I don't think anybody else does. So I was kind of surprised that you want to hear about that. And then he said, well, I'd like you to come in and talk about being an advocate, and that's actually something I'm very passionate about doing. I like my job, but I really like being an advocate, and as you'll find out, that wasn't really something I had planned on doing in general. You're graduating, obviously, today. You have that master's degree. That means a lot. You've learned a lot of skills, right? You've learned, the obvious. You've learned about the research process, about the research business, about law, about ethics, all that kind of stuff, and that's all really important. More than that, I think Kurt brought up earlier, you get that sort of global view of things, and I think of it more as a big picture view. You know how to assess the big picture and pick out the parts that you need to really sort of make yourself learn more. You know what you need to learn, and you know what's important to learn. And I think that's really a key to succeeding in your profession as well as being an advocate. And so that's really what I want to talk about today, because I think you're in a unique position. Okay, you've learned how to assess your own strengths, the strengths of your group, of your classmates, of your faculty probably. You know how to figure out what everybody's strength is and plug them in where they need to be plugged in, because as we all know, to get through this program, it's just really a matter of putting your head down at times and just plowing forward. And a lot of times that means, or it might mean, falling on your sword. It might mean dictating, basically telling people, delegating jobs to everybody so that everybody does their part and gets it done so that we can all be successful and we can finish in the allotted time. And I really think that's key, and that's a unique set of skills. And when you apply that to something like volunteerism or advocating for things, as I do, in large part, it's a really unique set of skills. You're really looked at as somebody who's, this is really a person that I need to look up to, that I need to listen to. Not only because you have those letters after your name now, which you certainly do, but also because it's clear that this person knows what they're talking about. To get through the program, you obviously know that you can't compromise integrity, right? You wouldn't have gotten through this program if you did, because we all have learned over time, if you're willing to compromise your integrity, people figured that out pretty fast. You might have some success in the short term, but certainly not in the long term. And you're really, 10 years from now, people can always look back and say, well, that person was really a backstabber. That person really went back on their word, and I wouldn't ever want to work with them again. And so it's really important, if you're thinking about long-term leadership, to think about integrity and personal integrity. You've obviously got the knowledge from the program, you've got this integrity. challenge and risk. I think that's another big part of succeeding business, but it's also a great part of volunteerism and being an advocate. And the reason it is because you can take all the chances you want, and what are they going to do? Fire you? Right? I mean, it's just not going to happen, right? You're working for an agency probably, or volunteering for them, or whatever, that really needs you and they really value you and they trust you. They're not going to get rid of you. You can try out whatever you want, take on any new challenges that you want, and put that on a resume later as you have the experience, right? It's all about gaining experience, but a lot of people don't want to do that in their professional life, and I think that's a big part of it. And really, what it really all comes down to is following your passion, and it's really become a passion of mine, and it was unexpected, and the reason it happened and the way it happened. And Kurt knows a little bit about this because I contacted him early on. But probably, well, it was almost a year after I graduated in 2007, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, which I'll always call MS because one of the things it affects is my speech, and that's harder to say for me, ironically, right? So I had MS after my name, after graduating from this program, and then a year later I never wanted to see it again, of course. So, but there it is, and I figured, well, what are you going to do? You make lemonade out of lemons, right? I mean, that's all you can do. You don't really have a choice. But that's not to say I wasn't totally freaked out, because we get freaked out. Do you guys know what MS is even? I mean, a lot of people know people with it. It's basically, for those who don't know, your electrical system gets all screwed up, right? Your immune system attacks your nerves and nerve coverings, and you get misfires, or you get incomplete firing or non-existent firing, and that's why you have this complete weird range of symptoms. So to give an example, I went from running marathons to using a cane when I walk, and my speech got really bad, although I've done a lot to make lifestyle and nutritional changes based a lot on what I've learned in this course, or through this course, to make myself better and make myself to sit here and speak in front of you, which I think is a pretty cool thing, and it's really a great thing to advertise, or at least for me, not for you. But I was totally freaked out, and so I thought, well, I'll buy myself some time. I knew a little about clinical trials because of some work I had done prior to being the biosafety officer. And so I saw that my new neurologist, who he wasn't new, but I was new to him, so I didn't know him at all, was the PI on this new clinical trial. And it was a concept that was interesting, a little weird for a lot of people. But it wasn't for me because I understood the science of it. I knew it wasn't that big a deal, but anybody have a guess as to what I did? It's I swallowed parasite eggs. So I was actually the first volunteer on what's now known as the HINT study, which I don't even know if it's still going on actually. But I swallowed pig parasite eggs for 3 months, I think. I was, as I said, I was really early on in the process, so it was just a kind of a safety study. But what it ended up doing was I found it was a great way to break the ice. I thought, well, this is cool. There's definitely a need. I knew that people enrolling in clinical trials is a place where you have a big problem, and that's a bottleneck potentially. And so I contacted the MS Society, and I said, do you care if I drive around the state and talk to different support groups about this and show them how to enroll if they want to and explain my experience? And they said, yeah, absolutely. So I did that. So I started going around the state and talking about my experience with the clinical trial. Again, swallowing worm eggs was a good icebreaker, so people kind of latched onto that. And then the MS Society contacted me and said, why don't you teach a class on the subject at our upcoming MS Summit, which is kind of a big deal in my world now. But that was 2010, so I taught a class at this big MS Summit thing that they did. And that led to some other things. My neurologist put me in touch with some reporters, and so I actually was interviewed for a Wall Street Journal article, and I was featured in a BBC Future article, which was really pretty kind of cool. I mean, that's international attention, and my name is all over the thing. And it doesn't you know, I figure in my lifetime, is that really going to come up again? And the answer is probably not. So I was always pretty proud of that. That opened a lot of doors, a lot more doors. I was interviewed by the news. I joined the MS Walk committee, which is a big charity event thing that they have. And I started doing some news interviews for them, promoting events and radio interviews. I took the stage with my neurologist at a MS fundraising event in Madison and in Milwaukee, talking about the trial and answering questions and things, and it was kind of a fancy deal, and not what I was used to, but certainly pretty cool. And then, just to give you even more of an idea, so that leads to a number of things, and last March, I was contacted by the MS Society and said, hey, a news crew is looking to do some work for, or doing a feature for MS Awareness Week. Could you do it? And so I said, sure. And so they showed up at my house and did a nice piece that actually the MS Biotech Facebook page shared, which, I don't know, so some of you may have seen it, but I thought it was a nice piece. So that was kind of cool. And then probably at this point, the feather in my cap is really, in January, I had contacted, this goes back to October even, but I had contacted the Foundation for Biomedical Research. I'm on an email list of theirs with just research articles, animal articles, things like that. And they put out a call. They said, we're doing this series on incurable diseases, and we are looking for people with MS. So I thought, well, I have all this experience. I have basically a resume, right, for this volunteer stuff that I do. And so I sent that to them, and they emailed me back within an hour. And I talked to them for an hour the next day, and they said, yeah, we're coming. So in January, they were at my house, or in the city, for 3 days. And a couple of those days were with me and my family, interviews and watching us around the house. I did a mock doctor's appointment with them. They filmed that. I set them up with some MS researchers around campus. I'm sure they thought they hit the jackpot with me because I was able to do that. So that was all a pretty cool thing, and it all really came down to the fact that I had learned so much. I knew a lot anyway, but I learned a lot about leadership and about figuring out what the big picture is through this course. And so I would encourage you to do that because there's a lot of value there, and there's a big chance for you to gain a lot of experience and take risks and not necessarily, you know, hurt your career because of it, right? You can do whatever you want, and they're not going to fire you. They're just going to be glad that you're helping out. So that's your opportunity, and that's a real need that you need to fill. And I would really encourage you to do that. So anyway, that's all I have. Congratulations. This is a great accomplishment. I can't emphasize enough. So enjoy the night on Wisconsin.